So in this video, we're going to be looking at the student profile, the Learning Continuum class sheet, and how to make kind of a pseudo-created progress monitoring sheet. Remember, there are only 3 data points within the MAP program, MAP testing, MAP growth program. Beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year. And our teachers are so trained, and as administration too, and we are always needing something that's an assessment, a formative assessment, checkpoints, data monitoring all throughout. But with the program only having those 3 data points and us pulling away from assessments and CBAs and benchmark, it can be a little bit um, overwhelming for teachers or nerve-wracking. And so one of the things that we use is the pseudo progress monitoring checklist. So for within the student profile, you can look at the different grades or different content areas. Within instructional areas, we can see the 4 for math: data, geometry, representations, and relationships, right? If we're looking at those within them, we can see the RIT score of the students, and we can click in these areas to see a breakdown of what's needed for TEKS. Before we get here, it's important to go to the Learning Continuum and always look at how the student is or where the student is grouped. So I'm going to just pick instructional areas, the data analysis and monetary transactions. So keep that in mind, data transaction, data and money. I'm going to go to the reporting category and open up the programs, the strands for that TEK. The student's RIT score within that area is 223. Overall, 233, but remember, we need to be paying attention to the individual scores. Overall, 233, but for this area, 223. A side note, whenever teachers are making small groups, it's important to advocate for fluid groups and groups that are changing. Not changing every day necessarily, but often, and room to change because students grow and acquire skills at different rates. Many times, if a teacher sees a student as having a high overall score, he or she will put that student in the high group for everything and keep that student in the high group for the entire year. Well, that actually makes more gaps than it helps to alleviate. If a student is too high and but you think that overall they're low, and so they're in a low group, struggling group, you teaching them a skill they already know is wasting your time and their time, and that's instructional time that you can't get back and that you could be using more valuable and more intentionally in another area. On the other side, if a student has an overall high RIT score, but for whatever reason, for a skill, a strand, an area really kind of low, if you're teaching and having that kid in the high group of skills, you're going to be teaching above his or her level, not reaching and teaching at the level. And so, in fact, you're actually making that gap even wider because the kid is not going to acquire the skills that you're teaching because that isn't where they are just yet. So it's important to note overall, but individually what they are. So 223 for data analysis and monetary transactions. 223. So I'm in data analysis and monetary transactions. I'm going to go ahead and just stick with data. 223. I'm going to go down to the RIT band, 223. So right in this area, and there I see the student right there. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 with that student altogether. If we look at the RIT scores, 227, 218, 223, 223, 233. We have 233, 218. That's 15 points of a difference right there. A teacher in class, if they saw these two students, most likely their overall RIT scores are varied and wide. So they'd probably have them in a different grade band or a different grouping. Looking at this report here for Learning Continuum Class View, it helps teachers be a bit more intentional when creating these groups. Because again, a teacher who is a novice or just kind of thinking high, high, always high, low, low, always low, would not put these two students together and would not be teaching these two students the same skill, when in fact they are on the exact same area, in the exact same area. So let's take a note of the names. We have this student, that student, that student, that student, that student. When I toggle back over to the student profile, I can group by standard or by topic. I'm going to go ahead and do by standard so I can see the actual TEKS. Learning statements, if you hide it, well, then you'll just see just the TEK. Learning statements help show you a bit more about what the kid can and can't do and what should be going forward. And then you can also change it to see the reinforced skills, develop skills, introduce skills. The student is a little bit higher for most things in 5th grade, so I'm going to just pick develop and introduce. And here within data analysis and monetary transactions, I can see the TEKS and what within these TEKS the student has already developed and what they're ready to work on and going forward in. And so you can see, Haley's already developed this skill. This skill is ready to develop this skill, is ready to begin this skill. It's almost like a TEKS deconstruction activity that's already done for you. You can use these as individual learning objectives or learning outcomes and statements and focus for small groups, whole groups, individual activities. A lot of the work is already done here for the teachers, and so getting to use this would be valuable. So after I look at all this right here and I can see where the kid is or isn't and what I need to be working on, you can always go up to print and share. For me, I would do batch print. And then within this, I'm going to make that pseudo kind of progress monitoring sheet. I'm going to focus just on mathematics, but you can do the same for reading. So mathematics, I'm going to just go ahead and keep all of the comparisons there. When I get ready to select pages, you can do student profile overview, comparisons, or just instructional areas. I'm going to go ahead and click everything just so that it's all right there for us. We don't need to include map skills at the moment. And then this is where you can make progress monitoring for just one student, or if you have a group of kids that you already looked from the previous learning continuum, you can make a progress monitoring for that group. You can make 3, 4, 5, 6 folders of small group activities and small group learning objectives for each group of class, and that takes it out for 2 weeks or for 3 weeks or for 4 weeks because you already have the objectives and the learning statements as provided to you by MAP, learning continuum, and within the student profile. So all you need to do is select the students you want to group in this format, this data file. You can do it for all students, just this student, or the select ones. If you do the select ones, this is where you can go in and pick those 5 names. So I've got Haley, Ava, Jada, Jada, Amber, and Jaden. And I can create my PDF. So it includes students with subjects and test results. Include two page break for that. Just select them all and print. This is going to be a big file, so it may not be the best to print it, but you can always download and save it, just having a computer to keep it right there. Let's go to the reports queue and see if it's ready. So in the report queue, it is ready. So I'm going to go ahead and click the student profile. So now I'm in student profile, and remember at the very beginning I wanted to give a batch summary of the students, and so the small group I have for these kids right here are represented, their names are there. If I keep scrolling down, I can see overall it goes one student by one student's profile page, the overview of it all, and gives me instructional growth areas. Now if I look down right here, this is where I had the TEKS and data points from previous that I wanted to be represented there. Now this isn't a checklist that we're used to seeing, but it's very much so scaffolded and sequenced well. And so I would use this with teachers as checking off, checking off. I know what she can do. Check, 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 check. You can use this almost a pseudo monitoring checklist. Now it's 90 pages, and so you have to go through and pick out exactly what you're needing for the TEK band for the next 2, 3 weeks, what you're working on focusing in on, or just make some notes here and there. But this gives teachers and administrators something that they're used to, but not in the same way, that they can use as a data point in between tests and assessments.